Experienced developers, people who know AI tools and know how to code for at least a few years, at least according to one of the studies we're about to review, they were 19% slower when they measured them when they used AI tools versus when they weren't using AI tools. That's not even the most interesting part about that study either. But the more interesting part, those same developers, they self-reported that they were actually 20% faster when they were using the AI tools. This is not measuring. This is what they were self-reporting.
Yeah.
What the study says is that they felt faster using the tools, even though they actually were slower when they were measured. That's not a productivity tool at that point. That's just working with two stiff drinks.
Yeah, definitely. Perception is not reality here, it seems like. Also, electricity made factories less productive for 20 years before they figured out that they had to retool the factory floor. So we got to be careful not to confuse, bad rollout with a bad technology.
Yes.
But.
And you see, I'm going to say yes and, but it's actually a yes but, because I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Yeah. You're disagreeing with me.
Right.
Thousands of CEOs admitted, another Fortune survey that we're going to talk about today, that AI had zero measurable impact. So the Solow paradox is back. It's back in full force, and it brought all its receipts. Welcome back to Arguing Agile. If this is your first time, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Product Manager Brian Orlando, and this is my co-host, Enterprise Business Agility Consultant, and the Fresh Prince of Process, Mr. Om Patel.
Fresh Prince of Process. Is that a follow-on from Prince of Bel-Air? I don't know. Let's continue.
By the end of this episode, you'll be able to call out the difference between AI adoption theater and actual AI value in your company. By the end of the episode, you'll have hard data or data, I don't like either one, from peer-reviewed studies and CEO surveys to push back when leadership says, listen, I don't need to just use AI, okay? Everyone's using AI, You just need to use it. Just do what I said, okay? Just disagree and commit,
Ooh. There might be a podcast near you already on that topic.
There might have been a podcast previously on that topic. All right. And then the last thing, that you'll walk away with a framework to figure out if AI, or really any effort being hoisted on you, one or the other, is actually helping your team or just making everyone busier or making them feel more busy or giving them more busy work.
Or all of the above.
So let's start with the Solow paradox. Solo.
As opposed to so high.
Oh! I thought you were going to say Han Solo. I thought we were going to make a Star Wars reference, but
I almost did. But
darn! I really thought we were.
I didn't want to lose our Trekkie friends.
All right, that's true. The Solow paradox. It's back. It brought receipts. That's our first category. In 1987, economist Robert Solow said, "You can see the computer age everywhere, except in the productivity statistics." So now near like 40-ish years later, 40 or so years later, Fortune published an article where thousands of CEOs admit that AI had no measurable impact on productivity or employment. So the question here is history repeating itself, or are we just not learning lessons the first time? That's what I'm asking.
That's a great question. Both a great question. This is a brand new study that just came out. So fresh off the press. Do you still say press in the digital world?
The Fortune article is not paywalled, but the Financial Times September 2025 article that it came from is paywalled. And that I have the link in here. All right, here. This is the February 17th, 2026. This is the article title on Fortune is called "Thousands of CEOs Just Admitted AI Has No Impact on Employment or Productivity." And it has economists resurrecting a paradox from 40 years ago. And it's got a picture of Nobel laureate and economist Robert Solow. And economist, by the way, everyone, is a person who is basically unemployed. Just wanted to point that out. Boy, in case you thought Scrum Masters did nothing all day, let me introduce you to economists.
Economists and weather forecasters.
So he says, following the advent of transistors, microprocessors, integrated circuits, and memory chips of the 60s, economists and companies expected these new technologies to disrupt workplaces and result in a surge of productivity. Instead, productivity growth slowed, dropping from 2.9% between 1948 and 1973 to 1.1% after 1973. That's a well-documented slump. I understand there's some leaps in here where it's, transistors, microprocessors, integrated circuits, memory chips, and then a slump. But there's a lot more going on in the world.
Definitely.
Yeah, so newfangled. I like that they added the word newfangled.
Newfangled, I like it.
I mean, interesting concept. I don't know exactly how strongly I'm going to make my case off of this because I don't think it's great. But I want to flip over to the Financial Times article that they cited studies done in this article from the Financial Times in this section. Okay, and I do need to talk about this. So in this article, they talk about the financial has used AI tools to identify the mentions of technology on the SEC of filings and earnings transcripts. They went over a bunch of companies of the S&P 500 is what they did. And they said 374 of the S&P 500 mentioned AI on their earnings calls in the past 12 months. Now, this article, I think, was out in September 2025. So this is mid-2024, late 2025 is when they did this research.
So about a year or so.
87%. That was a good time period to be. I mean, I think Claude 3.5 was out.
Yeah.
Anyway, the 87% of the calls logged as wholly positive about the technology with no concerns expressed. The Financial Times sought to categorize the expected positive benefits of technology. Companies tend to see AI as a risk because they're not used to having systems or processes which they can't rely on 100%, said AI governance expert and author.
I find it staggering is in that paragraph that you're highlighting.
The MIT research here, we have that study as well, by the way. It says, when we spoke to executives, they would often say the internal tool was very successful. This is the 95% of Gen AI pilots fail. But when we spoke to employees, we found zero use.
Oh, there you go. That's telling, isn't it?
So to categorize the expected positive benefits of technology, most of the anticipated benefits, such as increased productivity, were vaguely stated and harder to categorize than the risk. Companies anticipated being able to optimize workflows through automation and hope to achieve market differentiation through their use of AI. So, I mean, that sentence means nothing right there, first of all. Some hoped to be able to use technology to improve the personalization of their products. Filings do reveal the companies able to give clear AI upsides include those that serve the rising AI-driven data center boom. Energy companies, First Solar. Yeah, of course.
Without that, nothing goes.
Yeah, of course. We read the Fortune article. We read the Financial Times article that had the study that the Fortune article was based off of from a little. Is that what Fortune does? They just go look at other people's articles and then
It's a great business model.
Rewrite them?
Yeah, I can help you with that.
Oh boy. The claim here in category number 1 is that the Solow paradox is back, that you're going to come out with this great technology and then there's going to be a slump for a while before there's a real rebound. That's what the first category is going to say. And the defense of these points is going to be, I'm going to rattle off a couple of these defense points because you've probably heard them a lot, especially from the AI folks. Your ROI will show up eventually. These tools are still new. Businesses are still trying to figure out the best place to put them. And then, every major technology has a lag period that we already kind of talked about that as a reason. And then of course, companies just need better implementation.
Yeah, you'll hear this a lot, but also these are pretty thin, really, because this guy Solow called it some time ago. We're still early. Are we that? We're not that early. I mean, the study goes back a year and a bit, and we've accelerated a lot since then. The ROI will show up eventually is just a hope and a prayer.
I think the evidence in here that's kind of weak, there wasn't any metrics. I could have swore there was, but I read a lot of research papers today, so maybe I'm confused. Financial analysts quote takeaways with researchers' takeaways, which are very different, which is odd.
Who can blame me for that?
Yeah, but the companies were very clear about the AI risks, and that's what they said. It was super easy to categorize the risks. But the companies were very murky when it came to saying
the benefits.
Yeah, the benefits. They didn't give any numbers, even though 87% of them were wholly positive on AI. I mean, I'm also positive on AI, so it's difficult to not defend this one. Hey, the tools are getting better. Hey, it is early. Also, there's been a lot of firings and layoffs attributed to AI. So I mean, it's not that early. It's not that early.
And also, just one of the data points we picked up from that paper was 95% of AI initiatives fail. That stat reminds me of a story where the casinos implemented these AI robots instead of dealers. And it was thought that these, of course, they don't take breaks, etc., right? And they don't have emotions.
Yeah.
However, most of the customers didn't like that. They rejected. They wanted the human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, the casinos receded and pulled out those robots and put in human croupiers again. So there are many reasons why these things fail. Obviously, we're not going to go into those just now or even in this podcast. But coming out with saying, "Oh, the benefits are murky," there's probably two reasons. One is they really don't know.
Yeah.
And then the other is they're being cagey because they don't want to be caught off guard.
Right.
And be caught. Basically, they want to be wrong, because if you're pulling these stories out into your forward-looking kind of financial, reports, if you're wrong on any of these, it just has a bad repercussion in the industry, in the markets, right, for your stock. So there's that too.
Yeah, it's also probably because data centers, like, that's big money. All the AI providers are going in front of the government asking for billions of dollars to supplement their incomes because they're not profitable, because it costs so much money. Because they have not invested in figuring out a way to run AI at a profitable level. That isn't that doesn't like cover the costs. Basically being profitable. That's what I'm trying to
Right.
say. That like they have to be positive. Like there's a whole nother podcast here about like corporate happy speak. There's a book that I read a long time ago about corporate happy speak, where no one is allowed to question a narrative or bring up evidence contrary to the positive opinion.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of that happening here. With the 87%. Where is it? 374 companies mentioning it. 87% of earnings calls were wholly positive about AI, but no actual metrics about success cases.
I think that's pretty much in their lane, to be honest. I mean, in the earnings calls, they are always positive, and then they just simply have a little kind of footnote just saying, past performance is no guarantee of future results.
I think what's actually happening here is they are experimenting with it, and they have not figured out where it goes and how to use it. They just don't want, like, they got FOMO. They just don't want to miss out on this phase. So if it was being written it was being written off in a way where, hey, we're spending this much money on R&D to figure out how to rework our work processes, then that would be one thing. But as we know, there's no money for reworking work processes. There's no money for anyone to try to help the development team figure out how to unblock blockers organizationally. There's no money for that.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Oh boy, Siri, set a timer for 20 years. I guess we'll find out where this goes. Solow.
Except the pace of change is much, much more furious. So it's not 20 years anymore. It might be more like 4 years or 5 years.
Yeah. This is the story that opened the podcast. Is when electricity was invented and they started bringing electricity to cities, like, the companies could trade out their steam engines for like electrical motors, but like it wouldn't really increase their productivity, right? But if you fast forward 20 years, now the whole factory has been redesigned to the electric power saw or other electric type of machines.
Right. Then
obviously now you're not going to compete. I don't know where we go with this category. I think we set a timer for 20 years and follow back.
All right, folks. Set a time for 20 years. That means you need to put that on your calendar. Come visit us again in 20 years.
That's right. I think we call this one. I think we call this category a draw. We haven't had a draw on the podcast in a while. All right. So, what do you think about this category? Do you think it should be a draw? Do you think one side has it? Let us know in the comments. Has your company seen real, measurable productivity gains from AI, or you just have happy vibes? Vibe in the comments.
Yeah, vibe us in the comments. I like that.
Something. Sorry, I just realized there's no takeaway in this category. I almost forgot the takeaway category, so we're going to go back to the takeaways. Before your next leadership meeting or AI initiative, pick if you're lucky enough to have budget or have a say in the budget meeting. So what specific workflow are we redesigning, and how will we measure it before and after? That's my question here in the takeaways, and my bullet points are, we're going to be more productive, which is usually what...
That's just a hope and a prayer.
That's usually what they'll say. This is so we can be more productive. Everyone's got to be using these tools so we won't be left behind. That's just FOMO. I mean, that's not a plan.
Right.
And then you can't measure a process without a baseline. So you can't measure a
The
process.
numbers. Need that evidence.
Yeah, it's not. If it's not in statistical control,
Yeah.
you can't measure it.
That's right.
So there's a lot of theory of constraints happening in this podcast. I'm not going to name it, but it's happening under hood. Just know that it's here. There's a lot of Deming happening here. There's a lot of things that are not new happening in this podcast. That, you know, all the AI people, you don't know what you're talking about. We were replaced by AI and sentenced to exile on Gilligan's Island. I don't know. Sorry. Okay.
Just send us to Hawaii.
I got nothing else. And then you know, and hopefully along this process with these questions, you can vet out everyone else is doing it. You can vet the FOMO because if we're all just like, we got to have these AI tools because, and then FOMO is the only answer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good luck rationalizing the expense for all of this stuff, right? If that's your only answer.
Listen, why I want to call this category draw is because I think that it's just like every other feature that the executive walks in and says, we got to have this right now, and you just do it to not start a fight.
Right.
Yeah. I'll take my $100.
Comply.
I'll take my $100 free Claude Max subscription. Thanks, boss. Now get out of my office.
Right.
So again, that is the macro picture, and we're done this time with this one. The CEO can't prove it's working. Doesn't matter because they're in charge. Just disagree and commit home.
And keep that resume updated too, by the way.
Real early in the podcast.
I know, but in this scenario, what happens is failure tends to be blamed downstream, and the CEO is going to be just fine, thank you.
All right. What about people actually using the tools every day?
Right.
It turns out that the data doesn't prove that these massive, sick productivity gains, they're not even real.
They may not be real, but at the face level, they're there because we hear these things, right?
Are you saying perception is reality?
No, I'm saying perception is perception. We're going to deep dive into whether it's reality or not, and hopefully separate the wheat from the chaff.
All right, this is a really cool category. I think you're going to like this one. So here's something to douse the AI hype cycle that you're talking about, the AI hype perception cycle. A randomized controlled trial found that experienced open source developers with AI tool experience, they were 19% slower when using AI tools. But if you ask them if they self-report on their speed, they will tell you that they are actually 20% faster. And that is a nearly 40% perception gap between how people feel that they are and reality when you measure it. What happens when an entire team thinks they're winning while we're all actually losers? We're going to talk about Campbell's Law to start with, which is, hey, our old friend Velocity is back on the podcast, because that's basically what we're talking about now.
So clearly perception is not reality. And it's amazing to kind of discover that the teams are saying they're 20% faster. In reality, they're 20% slower. That 40% variance, what gives?
So there was a meter study, July 2025. It was called Measuring the Impact of Early 2025 AI on Experienced Open Source Developer Product.
Oh, yeah. That was
let's see. Measuring the impact of early 2025 AI on experienced open source developer productivity. Model Evaluation and Threat Research, METR meter. You like that acronym?
That's a great acronym,
right? I know. It's almost as if they came up with the acronym first and then they backed their way into or never mind.
Now, the secret to all acronyms?
That's right. Joel Becker, Nate Rush, Beth Barnes, David Ryan. Ryan. Probably Ryan. Anyway, so this was a random control trial of AI tools, understanding how AI tools at the February through June 2025 frontier affected the productivity of experienced open source developers. 16 developers with moderate AI experience completed 264 tasks in mature projects, on which they have an average of 5 years prior experience. So, first of all, the sample size is pretty small. Just want to throw that out there for anyone like looking to pillar me. They're using Cursor. They're using Claude 3.5. I'm assuming this is 3.5 Opus 3.5 and 3.7 Sonnet. Before starting the test, they forecasted that with AI, that'll speed them up by 24%. And then after the study, they estimated that their actual time was sped up by 20%. And then the researchers that were following their productivity said that they were actually 19% slower.
Amazing. So that first number, 24%, is just a swag.
It's a forecast, yeah.
Which is fine, because it turns out their forecast wasn't that far off, right?
If your metrics are done on the dark side of the moon. Like they said they would be 24% faster, and they ended up being 19% slower. So they were not far off from their own perceptions after.
But the reality was in another universe.
I was going to say, and their perceptions were completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like not even close to being right. Wait. One more thing I want to show you, which I think is really funny, because the slowdown also contradicts predictions from, quote, experts in economics. Hang on. I believe people that are watching this, they can see the chart. So there's a chart. 0 is obviously 0, right? It's right on the money with your prediction, right? And then here's the chart, and then hopefully you can see the bottom of the chart, which is basically the occupations, or the field. The economics expert forecast was
30 to 50,
just short of 40% faster. They said, "Oh, you'll be just short of 40% faster." So maybe a full third faster with AI tools. Yeah. Those are economics experts, which again, remember, is just code for unemployed people. And then the machine learning experts were very close to the same number, which machine learning experts, they're employed, but they were just people with math degrees that don't know how to code and learn to program in Python, but don't know how to capture bad variables. So when you run their applications and you put in an integer where a decimal should go, or vice versa, everything just blows up. So that's machine learning experts, by the way. And then the developer, these are all develop. If you because I got all my QA engineers hat on, and I'm making fun of everybody today. And then developer forecasts during the study, you see that one is like moderately down. It's like a full 10% down from the machine learning folks, right? If not a little more than that,
right?
In like the 20-ish, or I think we said it was 24, right? And then developer estimates after the study were down to 20. And then you see the red on the far right on the bottom, the observed result.
The reality.
Which is hilarious that the economists over here, the people, all the people making your junk food through the drive-through and serving it to your CEOs out there, because all they read is Forbes and HBR and whatever, like, those are the people writing for your audience that you work for, by the way.
That stat means absolutely nothing to me, because these people have never, like you said, never done
listen, like, it's like from farm to table, but it's like from the from the dumpster straight into the ears of your CEO, or I guess eyes and ears of your CEO. That's where the economy experts forecast go. It goes from there. It goes into their media that's crafted for CEOs to pay attention to, and they're reading that, and that's where they're getting the FOMO from. But you see, those folks are 60% off of reality, and I would argue connected to absolutely nothing.
That was the point. Yeah, it's connected to nothing. This sort of reminds me of some of the Gartner studies that are out there. You know, if it fits on a 2x2, it must be true.
Everyone loves a 2x2. I mean, I love a 2x2.
That's fine.
Let's just skim the rest of this. Direct impact. 46 tasks, they took 2 hours each on average. And the open source repos they were working in had 23,000 stars on average. 23,000 stars on average. They're basically big, mature code bases is what they're trying to tell you. And they're using Cursor, and they're using Claude and Sonnet 3.7. I mean, you're using good models. It's not like they're back in the day with Haiku 3 or something that, you know, right. I asked it to do something and it just guzzles
something completely different.
It just guzzles a whole bottle of glue while it's telling me confidently that, you know, it absolutely understands what I'm telling it. I'm surprised. You know, I said that, and a data scientist once got really offended that I was Haiku 3 can't. It's not a reason.
Why would you get offended?
She got very angry with me. Haiku 3 is such a bad model when you're actually trying to do any kind of like sorting where you need it to be halfway good, or any kind of summarization where you need to be halfway good. I understand it's fast, the point, and it's not that great of a model, Brian. Don't use it for that. Yeah, but what am I going to use it for otherwise? I'd rather wait and get an answer that I don't have to completely rewrite from scratch, because it's terrible. And yeah, she got very offended that I was calling the model and all of its output garbage and not suitable for anything that I was doing. No, I think it was because she probably was touting to leadership how good it was. So she probably was shocked that,
somebody's
somebody's
contradicted,
throwing her under the bus. Yeah. 5 factors contribute to the slowdown effect. We find mixed, unclear, no evidence for 10 factors. We find evidence against 6 factors. All right, so they're giving you we group these factors into 4 categories. Direct productivity loss, A. B. Experimental artifact. C. Factors raising human performance. And D. Factors limiting AI performance. Interesting. Okay.
That's all in the appendix.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to go through all of this because there's a lot in here about exactly how they went through to find these results. Although I do appreciate the graphic. This is a great paper because there's a lot of data in here.
I think if there's the other side of it, so to speak, if there's anything to offer there, it might be, well, it was a complex code base. But these guys are experienced.
Right.
And they're using pretty decent tools. Those are the two sides of it. And yet still, there's a 40% delta in perception versus reality. I mean, a delta I expect, but nothing that big.
Well,
this is huge.
I'm glad you went into the against. The first against I'm going to throw out, and I know every single person in the world's heard this. These tools are only getting better. This is the worst these tools are ever going to be.
So the tools are going to get better, right? That's one side of it. The other side, they argue, is you'll get better.
I do enjoy a good "you're not prompting hard enough" argument. I do enjoy that. And then I also, if we're accusing people, I also enjoy the young people get it, and the senior people just they don't want to adapt. They don't want to learn a new tool.
So let's just hire a bunch of young people. IBM, by the way, is hiring a whole bunch of young people.
I heard they announced that to bump their stock up. I'll believe it when I see the young people flocking to Big Blue as their first employer. I look forward to that. IBM might be making a comeback. Oh, we're not.
Yeah, I'll put a watch on that stock.
Set a 20-year timer for see how that one goes. So all the young people can learn COBOL and program on mainframes.
IBM kicks, making a comeback.
This one's fairly clear. It's these were experienced developers that knew how to use AI on a mature code base, like something that would mirror reality. When they weren't building Hello World, to-do lists on Lovable, in an hour and then shipping it and like that. What I see a lot of people doing, they weren't doing that. This is deep.
Yeah. So the writing's on the wall. It is definitely proven through at least these studies that perception is not reality, and using AI tools actually slows you down more.
Which is interesting because that's the proof that they found is that using the AI tools slowed these developers down working on super mature products. But the study confirms that the developers reported they felt like they were faster. So that's an interesting takeaway that I don't hear anybody talking about is people feel like they're doing stuff fast, but when you actually study side by side, you find that actually has a cap somewhere. It would have been interesting if this study was only with 16 developers. It would have been interesting if they expand that and do it with different size projects or different size libraries, different size repos, different size products, and maybe different experience levels.
That would be cool to see that variable too, the experience level. Especially because we're saying, juniors will learn it faster. Okay, if that's the case, right, that study will prove it or disprove it.
Right.
That'd be an interesting one.
So I think what we learned in this study, you can't rely on self-reported AI productivity numbers that are just kind of forecasts or estimates. And we also learned that the economists shouldn't give forecasts on AI anything. We learned that. Pretty sure we need to measure the output. I think that's what I'm saying. We need to measure output,
right? And
don't trust economists. That if I have some takeaways here, let's pick one team. So we're gonna say this would be great to do is like a double-blind controlled experiment or whatever with hundreds and hundreds of developers.
But who has time for that?
Yeah, definitely not me. I don't even have time to make a sandwich today. At your work, we're going to pick one team. We're going to measure their cycle time. We're going to measure their defect rate. We're going to measure their throughput for 2 sprints. We're going to create a baseline. That's what I'm saying. Basic theory of constraints stuff is what we're doing. We're going back to basics. Then we're going to add AI for 2 sprints after that.
And repeat.
Or maybe we'll give them a sprint or 2 to learn the tools, and then we'll add AI.
That's
right?
Fine.
Okay. We did a controlled experiment. We got a baseline. We waited some amount of time. We gave them AI, and then measure again, and then we're going to see against the baseline real numbers.
Keeping other things constant, like the repo size, complexity, experience level, all of those, right? Because we're just trying to isolate this one variable. AI.
Yes.
So that would be a great experiment, and it doesn't take long. In a month or so, you could be done.
You can have real numbers. Yes. You can have real numbers, or you can just snap your fingers like the CEO and just make up the numbers. That's what I learned on the podcast. Or like you could be
an economist and just say the answer is blowing in the wind, my friend.
Or you could be a data scientist. Oh, I saw that, Bob. That was that Bob Dylan reference almost went right over my head. So that gives you solid numbers against a baseline to compare. and then no CEO executive feelings need to be ruffled because you've got real numbers. And then if you can't run that experiment for some reason, you can't get buy-in to run that experiment.
Why would you not able to do a simple experiment like
well, it's probably because your data scientists, they forgot to check the int that they were feeding into a decimal field, and then you lost all your data. Yeah. They're not good programmers, that's why. Well, the economists are data scientists, but without the math and without the programming. And without stable employment.
Right.
Sorry.
I just got to say, no economists were harmed in the making of this podcast. Or data scientists.
Sadly. Sorry, I meant that about economists, not data scientists. They're
Right.
they're lovely, sensitive people. What do you think? Do you feel more or less productive with AI in your workflow? Have you measured it? Do you have numbers? Let us know in the comments. So the data shows that developers they perceive themselves to be faster, but in actuality, they're not. So now we're going to talk about a different gap. It's the gap between what executives believe and what the workers experience, because it's not really a gap so much as it is the Grand Canyon. That's right.
Yes.
We're visiting the Grand Canyon today. Let's see. Workday. A Workday study, which I'm put on the screen right now. Gosh, when is this study?
November 25.
Okay. From the end of 2025. If you ever hear anyone saying that AI is the new hippo, like let's talk about this here in a second, because in the executive summary that I'm showing on the screen, which is actually a pretty fair executive summary, it says productivity gains alone are not translating into better outcomes for most organizations, and then only 14% of employees consistently achieve net positive outcomes from AI use. The next bullet point says, as a result, roughly 37% of the time saved through AI is being offset by rework. 37% of the time saved is being offset by rework.
So in 10 hours of work, 4 are being lost to rework.
Wow. Remember rework? We don't talk about rework in software development anymore. Developers just eat it, and we have to do 996.
That's right.
Yeah, I guess that's a
We
win.
should make AI do 996 now?
Nearly 40%. On the sidebar, you can see 3 things that leaders should know to get more out of AI on the sidebar here. Nearly 40% of AI's promised productivity is silently lost to rework. We just read that one. The most enthusiastic users often carry the highest burden, spending disproportionate time verifying and correcting output.
The early adoption tax.
Oh, the old Haiku 3 here.
Yeah.
Oh man, maybe it was because she spent so much time fixing Haiku 3's garbage.
It could be that.
Yeah, she felt like
burned.
She felt like no. Remember we did the podcast on the IKEA effect? I think she might have had the IKEA effect, where she had spent so much time fixing Haiku 3, she actually thought that the results from Haiku 3 were good.
Great. Yeah. She wanted to believe it.
That could be true, yeah. IKEA effect. I didn't think about that. It says, this hidden loss highlights a critical blind spot in how organizations assess AI performance. Most leaders focus on gross efficiency, how much time AI saves, but this metric alone obscures a real picture when time lost to rework is taken into account. The net value of AI is much lower than expected. Anyway, interesting. So that's just the executive summary here. There's other numbers in here. It's 2/3 of leaders, 66% cite skills training as top investment priority, which is funny to me because of everything we normally talk about the podcast, where like corporate America doesn't want any. They want to hire somebody with 15 years of AI experience rather than train anybody, Yeah, among employees who use AI the most, only 37% report increased access to training. So interesting, 66% of leaders say training up on AI skills is our top priority.
Good idea. We're not doing it, though.
37% of employees say they actually got any training.
Yeah, crazy.
Wow. This is a pretty good study from Workday.
It is pretty good.
I mean, if I have to ding Workday for anything, it's because I have to actually go to the Workday site and see the Workday site to get to this study. That's probably the worst thing about this study. So the baseline metrics here show that volume use is high. Nearly 9 in 10 employees, 87% of employees are using AI at least a few times a week, or nearly half, 46% using it daily. Productivity is on the rise. 3/4, 77% of employees report they're more productive due to AI. Time is being saved. The vast majority, 85% of employees personally save between 1 and 7 hours with their tasks. Interesting. So they're saying the people in this study that are doing the best with it are trained at twice the rate.
Yeah.
And they're mainly in IT and marketing. Interesting. And then the worst, mid-career professionals distributed across HR and operations. The disconnect here was between leaders training and the baseline number. of who was reporting access to training, which is funny because if 37% were reporting access to training and the majority of the 37% were in that one category, what does that leave everyone else?
Leave them out on a limb.
Yeah. That's
that study.
All right, hang on. Article. There's some editing here because I'm going back and checking the sources that I pulled together originally for this podcast. The Workday study, 85% of respondents said that AI saved them between 1 and 7 hours a week, but about 37% of that time savings is lost to what they call rework, correcting errors, rewriting content, verifying output, right? Only 14% of respondents say they consistently get positive outcomes from AI. Workday surveyed 3,200 employees that said they use AI, half in leadership positions at companies in North America, Europe, and Asia with at least $100 million in revenue and 150 employees. Okay, so that lets you know that they did their homework there. So there's a big productivity paradox. The most frequent users of AI are the ones investing the most time in reviewing and correcting what it produces. So that lines up, right? Leadership knows that we got to get on it. Leadership says, training in AI is the most important thing. Leadership also does not prioritize leadership training in AI. And then the people that are using it, the people left over who didn't get fired is what I'm saying. They're spending a lot of time doing rework for what the AI tools. So that a lot of time, a lot of frustration here. The AI time savings disconnect between workers and executives. You saw that people had between 1 and 7 hours, say, per week using AI, but those were a very specific block of people in the upper right.
Yes.
And those are and mainly IT people, whereas like the HR folks and people in operations or whatever, they really didn't see much gain, and they hadn't really integrated it into their daily process. So we did see that in the paper. We looked at the Workday study, and the Workday study didn't have a disconnect with executives as far as the amount of hours that people were gaining, but what the Workday study did have is it did have the disconnect between the amount of training that executives are putting into their workers versus the amount of training
they say
they desire. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, they say they desire
versus what they actually
66% or something like that, and the actuality was like 37%.
Yeah, that's right. Those were the numbers.
So there is a disconnect there. Is that all the executives want everyone to be adopting AI? In order for you to have more time savings from the tools, you have to use the tools more. And you have to specifically request training. You have to make a case for your own training because you're using the tools more, rather than just being frustrated that all your coworkers are gone because they got fired because of downsizing. And yeah. So this became a very murky category very quickly. As executives want the one thing, they're making these decisions to get the thing that they want, but then they're not putting money into driving in that direction. There seems to be a disconnect, I guess. That's the real story in this category.
Who came into this promising the Grand Canyon? So this is not surprising, really.
It's a pretty Grand Canyon. It's quite grand. That's what I'm saying.
Certainly a canyon.
It's definitely a hole.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Canyon, I guess, is the new chasm.
This category is really it's beating up a lot of different categories, so I'm just going to kind of move on because the executives here, if they were measuring the training, you wouldn't have that disconnect. If they were incented on training their workers better, you wouldn't have that disconnect. There's a lot of things that are in play here that are just disconnected. There is a Grand Canyon here. It wasn't the one that I expected going into it, but
you still found a canyon.
There is still a canyon in there. It's just the downsizing and expecting the coworkers to take up the slack because you're X times more productive. Each person we give the $100 Claude Max subscription to is going to be 3 times more productive. So we need a team of a third of a size. I mean, you hear people talk about this with regard to product managers. Well, we can have 1 developer and 3 product managers, and we can fire all 12 of our developers from all the teams, or 15 of our developers, and then we'll still be as productive. That is a dream. It's not substantiated by anything, according to, again, these studies.
Yeah, true.
I'll address leaders with the takeaways here. People that run teams, have budget, leaders, development leads, engineering leads, company leadership, and whatnot. If you're thinking about layoffs, or if you're thinking about pushing your team to be more productive with AI tools, and you're claiming that you just know that they're going to be more productive should you give them these tools? You might be right. Okay, you might be right. So let's step through the process together. All right.
Yep.
Step one. Go ahead and ask what are the specific tasks that are taking less time. You got to name them. Or what are the specific tasks that you think should be taking less time?
Presumably, they would be the predictable, repeatable ones.
Right.
But nonetheless, name them.
Then
It's a good start.
Number two would be to build a baseline so that you know how long the tasks take before you introduce AI tools. This is very similar to another takeaway we already said on the podcast, but since I'm talking to leaders here, I've got to slow down and talk through the theory of constraints and the lean startup. Or no, actually, I'm talking about the goal right now. I'm talking about the goal rat.
Elahu goal rat.
And then step three is how much time do those tasks take now? Measurements, not estimates, which is kind of the same as, I guess, number one is defining what the tasks are.
It could be combined, define and measure, but
that's true. And then number four is if you can't answer all three of these, like you're not being data driven, you're being vibe driven. Oh, or hippo driven. Like
hope and a prayer.
Just want to point that out. And if you don't know what hippo is, ask your team. That's like, ask your scrum. Never mind.
Nah, don't ask.
You haven't had one of those in a long time. So in this category, what do you think? Have you heard of a company whose leadership claims AI savings, but doesn't provide any proof? Let us know in the comments.
Also, let us know if your leadership has provided concrete evidence, because we can all learn from that, especially other leaders.
Yes, let me know. I'll wait. So we talked about that executives are living in a different reality. Not so far off reality than I expected when I did the planning for the podcast. That's good. Maybe a win. It's good to have a win on the other side of the podcast. In other news, water is wet. So we're about to get dark on the podcast, because some companies, they don't even pretend that AI is about productivity, and they will just tell you it's about headcount. And I appreciate that. I will tell you right now.
It's about productivity for their bottom line. That's what it is.
Is it? Let's talk about what everyone who's out there selling AI tools on the internet. Let's talk about what they're not saying out loud. Okay, AI. It's not replacing anyone. AI is not replacing anyone. Like it's giving executives air cover to cut headcount because everyone else is cutting headcount. So AI is the new layoff permission slip, and FOMO. That's what's really writing the permission slips. FOMO. Did you like my intro slide where
This is great.
M&A and flattening the org and right sizing and realignment and offshoring and everything you've heard all along the way. AI is just the next thing here.
Yeah.
So we showed the Financial Times article earlier in the podcast. Financial Times SP 500 analysis. It was from September 2020. It says when it comes to AI adoption, many companies are not guided by strategy, but by FOMO. That was one of the findings of that article. And then there's the Gartner MIT Media Lab quote that was in the Financial Times article about 95% of generative AI pilots fail.
Yeah.
So there's those two things. I'm not going to go back and show that report on the screen because we already showed it.
Yeah.
But to get you to get you ahead, I'm going to advance my teleprompter so it's useless. You like my spray paint font? I put that in there because you enjoyed it last time.
That is nice. That is good. I like it.
Shucking AI tools. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go straight. Let's have a classic straight into the against here. Is hey, AI genuinely automates repetitive tasks. Companies have a fiduciary duty to optimize for their shareholders.
That's true. They do have a fiduciary duty at any expense, probably. AI genuinely automates repetitive tasks. It's hard to argue against that because that is at face value. It's true. It automates things, right?
Yep.
It's just looking at the quality of the end result, which is what we said earlier in the podcast.
Right. The issue is what we've already talked about in the podcast. Is
4 hours lost.
What you think is repetitive.
Time.
What you think is repetitive actually was never repetitive in the first place. You didn't map out your business process well enough. You thought it was repetitive, but come to find out, now you've got to massage every output coming out of the AI, and now, that now come to find out that was never a test suitable for AI in the first place. But again, since you didn't train your workers and the executives are expecting this magic tool, now you've got friction, now you got blame.
And you're firing all your senior workers because you think the younger ones get it quicker. So all of these factors come at play here together.
I thought you were firing because you're ageist. Sorry.
So fiduciary duty is just one of those things that gets bandied about pretty much for everything. It came back from like when we went to digital, it was that too, right? But yeah, this is air cover. A lot of companies are doing this. You'll see this in the media with, 10,000, 20,000 employees shed. That just adds to the bottom line, like now. Mm-hmm. Forget about payback, a future payback of AI tools, right? Yeah. I mean, reducing headcount definitely adds to the bottom line immediately. But is that really what they should be doing? I mean, that's the question.
I mean, it certainly helps with the fiduciary duty to immediately boost the
shareholders, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, there's very little else you can do short of running a good business that gains profitability and grows over time. Yeah.
Bringing in ethics into this.
Yeah, I know. Well, speaking of ethics, like the other one here is workers need to upskill or get left behind. Which also is used to accuse older workers of, well, you weren't upskilling, you were stagnant, you weren't learning anymore, you weren't hungry.
This is a 1-2 punch, though, right? So yeah, you weren't trying hard enough. Right, also, we're not going to.
You didn't prompt hard enough.
You didn't prompt hard enough for your training, and we're not giving you training.
That's right.
So it's like, okay, how am I going to get training? I'm already doing a 996.
The numbers are only 37% of those employees that were out there.
The promises are 60-something%. 66.
No. That was just leadership's priorities that they were expressing. To
right.
The person
so I'm hanging on because I'm hopeful.
Right.
But the reality is different.
We already know that, like, companies
they
don't train people.
Invest.
If you're going to use this, companies have a fiduciary duty line. You already have the opposite. I already suspect you have the opposite viewpoint of, money that I put into a person, I can't tell out the other side whether that's going to be a 2% gain or a 200% gain, or there's no way to tell. There's no predictable way to tell. So your answer is don't put any money into people across the board. I want to keep on that one for a while, but maybe we'll take that whole point and bring it into another podcast just to talk about that phenomenon of
it's worthy of it.
Because it's just to leave that one alone for a second, so it doesn't dominate the rest of the podcast. There's two types of people that I've encountered in my career. There's the I want to leave things better than the way I found it type of person, and there's the I've got mine, so you figure it out type of person.
Yeah,
and that is it. There's people will fall into one of those categories.
There's not too many of the former category, unfortunately.
Yeah, see our podcast on how corporate turns good people bad, the neuroscience of power and corruption, Arguing Agile 243.
It wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. On the other side of this one, like 95% of AI, like all of the arguments that you'll hear, all the platitudes about, shareholder optimization, whatever. Cool story, bro. But also 95% of AI pilots failed. So you're not automating anything at that, but you're cutting, launching the pilot or introducing these tools, and then what?
Well, then you just put out a press release that says, our profitability went up.
Yes,
and then you join the dots on a shape that doesn't exist. Our profitability went up because we're implementing AI.
I see.
And we're adopting AI, which is, wait, what?
I've included it here as a sub bullet. Again, it probably could be its own podcast, but FOMO-driven layoffs, because that's what it is. Just a FOMO-driven layoff. The FOMO-driven layoff, it's AI. That's the trend right now, but it really could be anything. I mean, everyone, like all executives, can learn to play Pokémon tomorrow, and then now you got a upswing in Pokemon, right? Like, it doesn't matter what the trend is. The great Pokemon trend. The people that you're laying off by making sweeping decisions, generalized decisions, the institutional knowledge that you're losing when those people are gone, like Amazon, for example, when they're cutting 30,000 workers and they turn around a couple months later, cut 30,000 more workers. So Amazon's culture and institutional knowledge across the board, you're telling me that's not affected?
Hugely diluted, surely. I mean, people should be able to see that.
And just for everyone who doesn't use any Amazon, that you think you don't use Amazon products, so you're not affected. There were several high-profile outages that I'm not going to go and directly tied to those that first round of layoffs. Is the team that kept the DNS updated and whatnot. They're all gone. So I guess we don't need DNS.
Oh boy.
And we don't own. That's what I'm saying. We don't need DNS. I'm making some declarations on the podcast. We don't need DNS.
Just live in a DNS-free world.
Moving on. fiduciary duty. It means copying what other CEOs at Davos are doing. If you hear that your company is about to announce their AI-driven workforce optimization, or one of the other half a dozen things I had on the first slide, you have some questions that you should ask gently so you don't get yourself put on a list. That's what I'm talking about, not getting put on a list. And, some of those questions here are, which specific AI capabilities are replacing which specific human-run, repeatable tasks? And sit down and wait. I got a meme for you while you wait. Like, hopefully they have evidence and they've thought about it. The people making these decisions, hopefully they've thought about these things.
Well, they typically don't, unfortunately. But yeah, ask these questions. Definitely ask these questions.
The second one is what happens to the work that these people do that AI can't do? Because you don't really find out what somebody does at a workplace until they're gone.
Right.
I would love to say the executives have a plan, or I would love to prove that there's some sort of like malicious conspiracy that goes into it. But the reality usually in the workplace is people just don't think that deeply into it. They're not the people that are affected by the second, third order effects of the decision. So they don't really think too deeply about it. And it's not that they're trying to make sure you're having a bad time at work. They don't think about you at all. Does that make it worse or better?
I think it makes it worse. I think they get compensated for making those decisions.
Okay, well, it's the last question to get you fired. That's what these are called. Is has AI proven that it can do this work? Basically, so that we avoid the 37% penalty of rework. Right. When we go all in on this thing, or are we doing this because our competitor announced that they're doing cuts and their stock, jumped up, so we need to do cuts too because they're our competitors. So everything our competitors do, we do. So if our competitors were, if your mom says if your friends jumped off a cliff, you would jump off a cliff too. Like, CEOs need moms. I think that's what I'm.
That's
pointing.
Right.
That's where I'm going. Again, you can ask these if you want. You're going to get uncomfortable silences. You can get put on lists.
Would it be too early still to say what to do?
What should we do, Om?
Yeah, you can just keep that resume updated, folks.
What do you think? Has your company used AI as a cover for layoffs? Did the layoffs have nothing to do with automation, or I guess proven automation in the way that we've talked about rolling it out? So let us know in the comments. Contrary to the topics we've been discussing, we are not anti-AI. Just thought I'd throw
not
out
in the least.
Just the opinions expressed by Brian and Ohm on the Arguing Agile podcast are in fact, the opinions of the podcast, because who else? Yeah, right. Is there? We talked about the Solow paradox. Growth slows down after major technological breakthroughs, although I'm still not convinced. And then if I'm going to give way a little bit, I'm going to say maybe it isn't about the technology being bad. Maybe we really are just not deploying it in the correct manner or in the most optimal manner. What I'm saying is maybe all the AI people, Sam Jippity Altman looking for a man in finance, maybe he's right. We just need to put more money into OpenAI. That's the issue. So here's the part where we actually agree on. AI is not the problem. The problem is that companies are not introspecting and looking at themselves in a mirror and then thinking critically about what they see in that mirror. They're just bolting AI into broken workflows and processes and wondering why nothing has changed. Or worse, blaming people for the fact that nothing has changed. Or saying you didn't prompt hard enough, Home. You didn't redesign the work hard enough. You just added a chatbot to the chaos. Hey, what do we do to get this right? That's the section, which is really a Deming section of the podcast.
Right. It's Deming under any other name.
Speaking of Deming, Arguing Agile 199, W. Edwards Deming's profound knowledge for transforming organizations, or Arguing Agile 181, Deming's 14 points to the management revolution we needed 40 years ago. We did that podcast in 2024. Yeah, we did September 11, 2024. Yeah, I have a Deming quote. It says, I'm not going to talk like Deming. We're being destroyed by best efforts. Meaning, hey, we're all trying our hardest over here. Get off my back. Trying harder to do what you understand as your job when the system is broken often results in more damage. Don't just do something. Stand there and think. So if a bad system will beat a good person every time, what can you do?
It's a leading question, isn't it, really? The only logical conclusion there is change the system.
The funny thing is that MIT Media Lab study that says 95% of Gen AI pilots failed in the workplace, the tagline to that one that I didn't say up until now says that they failed due to a lack of long-term memory, customization, and workflow integration. If you're going to adopt this new tool and not actually weave it into your work processes or even really understand your work processes, their 95% is a failure rate they're giving you right there. That's not me making the number up.
It's not a good bet, is it?
Yeah, go yell at MIT Media Lab. Let's see. Arguments. Not good arguments, but there are arguments. Hey, you give everyone the tools on, the smart people to figure it out.
Ooh.
Yeah. AI adoption is the metric. I almost didn't put that one in there because nobody's going to believe that's a thing that like Satya Nadella and all those guys, you know what I mean?
This is a thing, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing that people are measuring most.
Right.
Who's using it? Why aren't you using it?
Velocity. That's
Right.
what it's AI
Adoption velocity.
Adoption velocity,
Yeah.
basically. And then the FOMO point in here that really doesn't need to be restated, but all of our competitors are pulling ahead using AI tools, so we have to use AI tools.
Right.
All of our competitors are jumping off of bridges, so we have to jump off bridges. So better training. We already talked about better. Everyone knows they need better training. Nobody's getting it.
Right.
37% of employees,
And only in IT and maybe specific
the
areas.
majority are in IT. This is Deming 101 in this category. It's Deming 101. It's also Goldratt. It's a theory of constraints. It's all of the Toyota stuff about process excellence and understanding the process, optimizing your bottlenecks. That's this category.
Right. So then in the 4, are we saying go back to basics?
If you're going to introduce AI into your workflow and you really don't understand your workflows, you need to get somebody in-house to help you understand the workflows to figure out where to inject AI to help you accelerate.
Yeah.
Because what will happen is you'll accelerate processes and you'll have another bottleneck. And who's to say that the next bottleneck that you discover won't be worse than the first bottleneck of not using AI in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? So somebody, I mean, wouldn't, if you were a leader in the organization, wouldn't you agree that we need to stay on the bottlenecks as we discover them and talk about which ones are critical and which ones are not to decide when we've got quote, enough improvement?
Yeah, this is that whole principle of, value chain analysis and value streams and identifying where the bottlenecks are, optimizing for the whole. That's what all this is about, really. If you're not understanding your processes and if you just go full steam ahead and automate them using AI, it would be harder, I posit, to peel back at that point later on, because these things become institutionalized. Your knowledge isn't there to begin with, but then once it's automated, your knowledge is even more insulated, right?
Yeah.
And so less people are aware of what it's doing. Simply, they believe in what it's doing, but it's doing the wrong thing.
It's great because it comes back to Deming of your automating processes that you never should have had in the first place.
Right. So understand your workflow inside out first, and then look at optimizing it.
Right.
Which is what he said in a nutshell, really.
All right, the Monday morning value framework that you can use to stop adopting and start extracting value. Start realizing value. Let's say that. I'm going to give you the framework right now. Here we go. Pick one workflow. This is your AI adoption. Congratulations, I'm your AI adoption coach. You can pay me $650 for this free class when this podcast is over. Put the money in my hand. Thank you very much. Through the internet. That's
We
what I
take
want.
crypto.
Yeah. Send me. Yeah. That is true. Pick one workflow that your team does repeatably with a clear, measurable output. So you have a one workflow broken down. You're sure that's what you do. You can measure it. You've got a baseline. You know how long it takes.
Right.
Pick that one. Map it end to end. Again, this is our every step, every handoff. This is our, where the bottlenecks. This is the goal right here. Also, value stream mapping, right?
Sure.
Exactly where things.
Yeah.
Identify a specific bottleneck. Just pick one. Again, not everything, not the whole end-to-end cycle.
Right.
Not an entire person's job. Pick one thing. Run a 2-week experiment with AI on that one step. You measure before and after on that one step. And then if it works, then you expand it, or you take it to other bottlenecks, or you take it upstream or downstream or whatever. But the idea that you're just going to wipe out someone's job and just drop AI into it,
wishful thinking at best.
Yeah.
And as evidenced by the 95% failure rate, right? It's not going to happen.
The next thing about these points here, pick a workflow, map it end to end, make sure you can measure it, pick a bottleneck, run your experiment. If you improve it, great. Expand it, do another one, or maybe move on to something else, right? Whatever's most critical.
Yeah.
If you can do that and you can show that you can repeatedly do that, congratulations, you're a product manager now. You might as well just change your headline on LinkedIn.
You're an AI product manager, no less.
Good call out. Good call out. That's big money right there. It's it's 50% more or something. I just made that number up. Boy, this baby can fit so much AI in it.
Yeah, that's the takeaway. So I think
that's the takeaway. Yeah.
It's a wrap up.
With that being said, we've solved all the problems. Everything is solved. So what do you think? Has your company tried to redesign workflows? Have you dealt with adopting AI from that perspective? Or do you just hand out Copilot to everyone and say, get in there, kid. We believe in you. Let us know in the comments. And if you found this episode helpful, do us a flavor. And
Flavor.
Like and subscribe and share it with someone at your company who needs to hear what we're talking about before the next AI budget meeting. That's what I'm talking about.
I should have brought my clock.
Oh, no. So we talked a lot on this podcast. We talked about spotting adoption theater versus the real AI value. We talked about actually getting data to push back on the, hey, just use AI, just do what I said, just disagree and commit mandate. And then we talked about testing whether AI is actually helping your team or if it's just
wishful thinking.
Positive vibes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we talked a bit about the goal. Any podcast that we can talk about theory of constraints and the Toyota system and the goal and Deming, and just get them in there with AI.
This is good. This is like getting all the flavors of the ice cream in one cone.
Got flavors is what I'm saying. So that's this podcast. Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments.
Yes, and please do like and subscribe. Let us know about any other topics you'd like us to talk about.